From a viral marketing campaign that's more insane than you could possibly imagine, to an animated film adaptation, and even a change.org petition to have the game remastered, Visceral's 2010 character action game Dante's Inferno had a lot going on. With IGN's recent article covering concept art and a script synopsis from the cancelled sequels coming out just a few weeks ago, I figured it was a good time to dust off my copy of the game and talk about it. There's something special about the edgy 360 PS3 era that let the team that developed Dead Space think, you know what needs a video game? Dante Alighieri's legendary poem The Divine Comedy. Leaning very heavily on Western interests with its dark Christian inspiration, and dipping its toes into a genre dominated by Japanese developers, unless your game has God of War in its title, this was a huge risk that EA went all in on. They had fake Christian protests of their own games staged in front of E3, just to drum up some buzz. Any press is good press, I suppose. There's way more insane shit they did to promote this thing, but first let's take a look at what the actual game was like. First of all, wow, are these pre-rendered cutscenes way ahead of their time. This is almost 4 years before the PS4 and Xbone would even come out, and there are many games I've seen today that don't look this good. A fully 2D animated cutscene plays out showing us Dante, reimagined as a 12th century crusader, and then immediately we get control with no direction other than to mash some buttons and kill a ridiculous amount of what looks like regular villagers. After vanquishing a full football team of these guys, we move on, and somehow the power of God has given Dante the ability to double jump, which has no explanation. And just like that, we're dead. Game over, I guess. Psych! We don't have time to be dead. 5 minutes into this game, we're thrown into a boss fight with the Grim Reaper to stay alive after being condemned to hell despite the assurances of Dante's bishop that the Crusades were God's will. Did I miss a page? I don't remember the Grim Reaper being part of this. Yes, this game is based on the Inferno cantica of the Divine Comedy, and is heavily rooted in the Christian faith because of that, but this is by no means going for accuracy. Dante Alighieri was a poet, not a crusader, and he certainly didn't steal Death's bone scythe and chop him in half. It seems chopping up Death means you just get to live, and Dante has returned home to his beloved Beatrice. Okay. Well, she's dead. We're just gonna cover that up.
Beatrice?
Even in ghost form, huh? Alright, well, I'm gonna keep you covered up and move on before I start calling her Breastatrice.
I have to go with him, my love. I gave my word.
Satan's got her booked for public nudity and takes off with his charge, and then a bunch of zombies appear because, Anyway, you get souls for defeating enemies, and you can use those to purchase your upgrades. Basic character action stuff. Beatrice statues are save points, yep, with the baps out, as is her signature, and you can do a little button mashing at some fountains to regain health. There are no items in this game like you would typically find in a game like this. This is the main way to heal. Lady, please! I'm trying to make a video here! End your war on clothes! And even in the 2D parts, okay, Breastatrice it is. Our Dante is not the virtuous man he claimed to be, and vowed to remain faithful to old Breets while he was out crusading, but this doesn't look like the face of an innocent man. Luckily, her holy cross still has the power of Christ infused within it, and we now have our ranged weapon. You can also use it to absolve enemies after grabbing them, which will net you some holy points, or you can choose to punish them, but more on that later. How the cross gives Dante the right to absolve souls, I have no idea, but let's not worry about it. Killing enemies builds up a bar that lets you access the redemption state as well, which makes you notably stronger and slightly brighter, I guess. Our Dante meets the poet Virgil, just like the Dante from the poem did, and he'll act as our guide during our descent into hell to rescue our beloved. This gives us our first spell, for some reason, and there's a mini-boss fight that ends in a very God of War-inspired QTE event to defeat it, which puts us in control of the beast. Damn, that scythe is flexible. And with that, we've now officially started our journey into hell. The Divine Comedy's depiction of hell famously featured circles that are all based on a specific sin that defines the souls imprisoned there, getting more and more wretched as you descend further. We have to start at the top and go down, beginning with riding Charon across the river to Final Judgment. This game used the poem as inspiration and often based its environments off of Dante's descriptions, taking liberties as they wanted, but the poem is famous for its brutal and terrifying depiction of hell, and this game is no exception. The music for this area is the horrified screams of souls entering into their eternal damnation. They did not pull any punches here. The presentation is more horrifying than any of the spooky games I played in October. I don't know what they did to the voice actors in that recording booth, but I don't think they're legally allowed to say. Oh, also, I picked up the Christ Kamehameha!
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
He protects, he saves, but not from your own stupidity. Larger enemies can all be killed with a choice to absolve or punish to gain some of the corresponding XP with a small QTE. The holy and unholy XP levels don't do anything other than dictate which skills you're allowed to spend your souls on though, so you don't have to worry about getting a specific ending based on your choices or anything like that. This is a linear game with only one ending. There are a couple different collectibles in this game, but the most interesting are the souls of famous individuals that were named in the poem as people Dante met on his journey through hell. You can choose to punish or absolve them to gain a large amount of XP for the associated bar, so we're going to go ahead and punish Pontius Pilate for that unholy XP. The man that ordered the crucifixion. Punishing him is unholy. We're not here to make sense, we're here to mash buttons. Oh my god, that is a brutal way to open a door. Satan shows up again to taunt Dante with his naked woman and laughs like a psychopath while he leaves, and then Charon does not want to allow Dante entry into hell because he is not dead. We're going to have to confront him, but first, a test of wits! Much like its inspiration in God of War, Dante's Inferno breaks up the endless combat with demons either by making you climb things or solve simple puzzles. In these sections is usually where you'll find the lost souls like Orpheus here, who I chose to absolve. Any guesses on how you go about doing that? Punishing was just a quick stab, but for absolution, it's time for Sin DDR! Why just absolving has a ridiculous minigame that gives you some bonus souls, I have no idea, but it does. Since Charon didn't want to let us through, Dante takes the Kratos approach and simply grabs his head and throws it into the abyss. That'll do. We're in limbo right now, and according to the Catholic faith that the poet Dante followed, unbaptized babies go there. According to the sick fucks at Visceral though, they also come equipped with circumcision hands and attack you on sight. King Minos makes the decision of which circle to send you to, and he's a little upset that Dante doesn't agree with his judgment, so he becomes the first real boss fight. In the Divine Comedy, Dante and Virgil make it past characters like this by smooth talking or running, but in Dante's Inferno, we stab him in the gooey underbits until we can grab his tongue and do that. This game can be pretty gruesome, but that is one of the worst ones. Well, that's embarrassing. Thankfully, there are pretty generous checkpoints for the jumping sections, and I don't have to do the entire boss fight again like I was worried. An adulterer! Punishment for you! Francesca was there because this is the entrance to the Circle of Lust, where a violent storm whips around the souls who committed that sin. There's a small puzzle to blast a hole into it to get inside, and okay, well, I don't think I can show any of that, but suffice to say, there are lust demons here, and they are equipped with both packages for Dante's displeasure. Oh, and that door is, I'm not censoring it, YouTube, that's just a door. The boss of this domain is Cleopatra, and we ride an elevator to the top of the storm where we have a brief confrontation with her, but you're just gonna have to deal with my artist's rendition of this encounter. Okay, so here's the boss fight. This is Cleopatra, and then this is the elevator. This is Dante with his giant scythe. It's his scythe, okay? And then on either side are these two platforms with a lever on each side. And you need to hit both of them because there are these little stake guys on either side. And then they're gonna breathe fire on her to knock her off of the elevator, right? But the reason I can't show this is because this game has a continued war on clothing, and that includes Cleopatra, of course, because we're in Lust. And it's one thing to cover that up, but it's another thing when she has two giant mounds on either side. We'll just put those there for artist rendition purposes, and usually mounds of such a shape and position have smaller, slightly different colored mounds in the center of them for other purposes. But in this game, there are not those. There are holes there with tongues that come out of them, and she scoops them up with her hand and deposits a bunch of the little demon babies. And you have to fight those and then fight her hand so that you can hit the levers and then breathe fire on her. Okay? We're not done with this circle though. At the top I found the fellow adulterer Paolo who slept with his brother's wife Francesca that I punished earlier. But well, I need some more holy XP. Look, I know I punished the woman and absolved the man. It's not what it looks like, okay? I just needed the XP. That's all it is. At the actual top, Beatrice is waiting, now turned into a succubus, but hey, she finally has clothes. And Satan is taking her to bed. That's fucked up, man. There's one more fight with Cleopatra where she summons Mark Antony for you to fight and occasionally attacks you herself and heals Antony a bit. After defeating him, we have to finish off Cleopatra too. Wait, Dante, I didn't mean like that! Oh, alright. Major bosses are what give you the spells, not the upgrade tree for the most part. So I have access to a mini Lust Storm at will now, which comes stock with Moaning BGM. Gives the storm that is approaching a whole new meaning. With that, we are now in the next circle, Gluttony, where in the poem they faced the Cerberus, so here we do too. Except he has Jar Jar Binks heads for some reason. The entire circle is disgusting, featuring intestine worm monster things, and a nice layer of gunk everywhere. Far enough in, we meet Satan again, who shows Dante a glimpse of the cost of his sins. He cheated on Beatrice with a slave girl during the war, and then his dad tried to get with her? What a family. At least she finally has some actual clothes on for once. Dante's father is then killed by a sudden home intruder, and Beatrice runs for her life, and of course, the cha-chas have to come out every time she's on screen, don't they? This is how she was killed, lefty to the skies.
Damn you. What more can you take from me? Is that a dare?
That was actually a really cool line, and I don't know what Dante was expecting there. That ends, and we fight a glutton beast that throws up and shits on you for attacks. Yeah. For some reason, you're in some kind of mirror dimension afterward with a weird portal puzzle that's never repeated anywhere else in the game. It's kind of annoying and comes out of nowhere. The shots this game takes at breaking up the gameplay vary wildly in quality, and this one was one of the biggest misses in my opinion. Also, I was in there for a long time because I'm dumb. This is the end of Gluttony, and now we are on to Greed, where Dante's father awaits. He took from the peasants while he was alive, and a major obstacle throughout this section is molten gold, just like in the poem. You can get a few new moves from soul upgrades throughout the game, but now is a good time to talk about the combat while dealing with these annoying spinning greed enemies. Most character action games have different combos that you can do by alternating light and heavy attacks and pausing during them, as well as different weapons. In Dante's Inferno, the special attacks are used by holding block plus a button, and never really change much, nor do they combo in naturally with your other moves. The spells are also mostly dictated by major bosses, and there aren't very many of them, and the only weapon you ever get is the scythe. I do still think this is a fun game, but it's not hard to see why it wasn't as big of a hit as its contemporaries like Bayonetta and God of War 3 at the time. It just doesn't have enough sauce. You aren't going to be doing any crazy judgment cut combos in this game, despite the fact that it also features a character named Virgil. It does get a little stale by the end because of this, especially because it eventually starts just using enemies from the previous circles instead of all new for each area like it started, but what kept me playing was the setting. Hell is so vividly described by Dante in the poem, and that made perfect material to make a really interesting set of levels for a video game. You also see Hell tackled in things like Diablo, but this version just has more character than any other I've seen, and you want to keep going just to see what the next circle will look like. Eventually you arrive at the end of Greed, and the fight with your own father begins. Dante automatically collects his soul after you defeat him, saying he will not be damned like his father was. And there really isn't much more to it than that. It's even an easy fight. This was a good opportunity to expand on Dante's character a bit, but they didn't really do anything with it. We now descend into Anger. Okay, so I might be slightly colorblind, and that hole was invisible to me at first, but even if there is a colorblind setting for the game, I will not be changing it. I just have to keep exposing myself to the colors, and eventually I'll build up blindness immunity. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. You then ride a platform across the river Styx, which turns out to be this guy's hat. That's a dick move, Dante. Just like Satan copping a feel in front of Dante for no apparent reason and then leaving. The big guy is pissed since, anger, and just attacks you while you clear some enemies. He tried to punch me here, but the power of absolution granted me strength. Then we finally get some answers on what happened to Beatrice. She wagered her soul with Satan that Dante would be faithful to her while at war in exchange for his safety. He gives her what I assume is supposed to be a fruit of Eden, which she takes as pills for some reason. And then this. That's more disgusting than all of Gluttony was. With that, Dante rides the giant beast that was just attacking us into the city of Dis, which is a really cool scene. But wait a minute. Wasn't Beatrice supposed to be this virtuous one, and the whole purpose of this journey is that she doesn't deserve to be in hell, and it's Dante's fault, so he wants to go rescue her? Am I missing something here? She wagered her soul with the devil. What part of that is so innocent? Also, she has naked statues of herself all over hell. She's like some kind of celebrity here. And she does that. There really isn't a boss fight for Anger, and we end up in Heresy quickly, where new enemies that Virgil tells us are the followers of Epicurus appear. These things are like summoners that strengthen other enemies, so you have to take them out as fast as possible when they appear, but they don't have that many offensive options. But let's go back to Epicurus. He was an ancient Greek philosopher that taught hedonism, prioritizing the absence of pain for all people. So why the hell is he in hell, and so far down? Well, Dante wrote this poem, and he didn't really like him. It's not quite that simple. He argued that Epicurus thought that there was no immortal soul, and that was akin to heresy against the Christian faith. It's kind of a stretch, and I really just like the idea that this is Dante's story, so he's allowed to put anyone in hell that he wants to, and we're reading his personal beef 700 years later. Who should totally not Dante OC do not steal C in hell? The guy that cut me off last week. The top few inches of everyone over 6 feet tall, and Ryan Seacrest. These later circles are kind of rapid fire, and just a small puzzle area is pretty much all there was to Heresy. With that, we've reached Violence, including the Boiling River of Blood and the Wood of Suicides. There we meet Dante's mother, who he was told died of the fever, but in reality she was unable to cope with his father's treatment and took her own life. Dante absolves her with the cross as she tells him to save Beatrice because she's innocent. I don't think she's innocent still, but sure, whatever. We also fight Dante's fellow crusaders in a different area of Violence, further emphasizing his sins as a soldier. This ultimately ends in a confrontation with his brother-in-law Francesco, who he swore to Beatrice to protect, but Dante is a serial promise breaker and failed to do that. And another soul is automatically absolved after a boss fight without a choice. It's pretty clear at this point that these are for some purpose, but we don't know what that is yet. Immediately after that boss, we get dumped into an encounter while riding an elevator down to the next circle, Fraud, which is something that this game loves to do, but I haven't mentioned up until now. There are no breaks in Dante's Inferno, and quite often, you go directly from a major boss fight into another encounter with nothing in between. It's very strange and doesn't even give you a moment to think. In Fraud, Beatrice is waiting to welcome Dante to the 10 circles of Fraud. This individual circle is broken down into its own 10 for some reason, but it's also like that in the poem. This wasn't a creation by the devs. And they use that to break up the gameplay a little bit by making challenges, something that this game is sorely lacking compared to others in its genre. There are no hidden challenge gates or anything like you'd normally expect, and this first one is just defeating the enemies as fast as possible with infinite magic. That's pretty cool. However, Visceral felt the need to do these challenges for all 10 parts of this circle in a row. Get a 100-hit combo, sure, not too hard. Get 5 air kills, not bad. It continues like this for a while, offering you bonus souls for completing an extra objective, and gets a little boring, and if you fail some of these, you die and start that challenge again, which is really annoying considering some of them just restart and let you try again if you fail. This kind of thing is usually optional in this kind of game, so I thought they would be nice about it, but no! Fuck you! Kill all enemies in a single combo. If it even drops for a second, it's an instant game over. And they can block your attacks. They even send in one of the big guys with a shield who blocks all the time. This is extremely annoying. I felt like I was in hell. You know what I mean. At the end, we face Beatrice and learn that not only did Dante fail to protect Francesco, he also made him take the fall for Dante's crimes, for which Francesco was executed. Dante used the Crusades like a private sin vacation. The cross is somehow able to just straight up save Beatrice at this point, which makes no sense considering how many times we've seen her with it, and then an angel descends into hell to take Beatrice's soul to heaven and tells Dante this is all somehow part of God's plan and that he will see Beatrice again. Yeah, right, man. Maybe when hell freezes over. Okay, maybe he's right. This is the final circle of hell, Treachery, where Satan awaits at the bottom. It's very short with this one small area where giants try to push you off the ice while you fight some flying enemies, which is extremely annoying, and then you have to walk across this crumbling bridge very carefully. This is the most out-of-place thing in this game to me. It's literally the final walk into the battle with Satan, and it's a random balancing minigame. I haven't read the full Divine Comedy, so it might be something from there, but I don't really get this inclusion. You have to smash some chains to get into the arena, which actually sets Satan free and starts the boss fight. You get divine intervention every now and then, which makes him vulnerable, and God likes to make Dante wait and tease him a little bit. And then you have to shoot him up full of crosses, which is hilarious. This is only the first phase of the fight though, and Lucifer jumps out of his own stomach for some fucking reason, and he fights you on foot. He has an unnecessary amount of health, but this is for sure the coolest boss fight this game has to offer. He's attacking you with flaming swords, shooting fire, teleporting around, and eventually Lucifer reveals his plans. By breaking the chains that bound him to get in, Lucifer is free to assault heaven once he's dealt with Dante. But Dante isn't just some man. He's got Death's scythe and a cross that nukes things with the power of heaven. But it actually turns out Dante has been dead this whole time. Despite literally every character in the game that should also know that, like Virgil and Charon thinking otherwise, this plot twist doesn't make the most sense. And don't forget about all those souls we collected on the way here. Yeah, sure, we'll just pretend like that all made sense too. The great boobies above pull Dante up to the shores of Mount Purgatorio, where he is now also hogged to the wild to join in the fun, and he tears off the cross he sewed into his chest, which turns into a snake, and the game ends, to be continued. Except it wasn't to be continued, because the planned sequels never happened. EA owned Visceral. Did you really think over 1 million copies sold would be enough to convince them to make another one? Probably not with the marketing budget they gave this thing, but let me talk about the sequels first. Dante's Inferno was based on the first cantica of the Divine Comedy, of which there are 3, so naturally there was a game plan for each one. The next one, Purgatorio, was going to be a complete rebuild of the gameplay loop. While God of War was a major influence for Inferno, the new hotness in the gaming industry at the time was the highly cinematic Uncharted 2, and Visceral planned to use that as an influence, complete with complex climbing systems as he ascended Mount Purgatorio, and more puzzles along the way. I'm not exactly sure what quipping Dante on a treasure hunt would have looked like, but I highly recommend checking out Tim Brinkoff's article on IGN if you want all the details. The gist of what was planned was that Dante would work together with some angels, and even fight some who join up with Lucifer, which doesn't really make any sense to me, as he climbed up the mountain to face him again at the gates of heaven. The plan was to turn the devil into a morally gray character by incorporating elements of the epic Paradise Lost, but reading IGN's story synopsis didn't really give me that impression, so I think that might have been lost in the translation to the CliffsNotes version of the story that the article gives us. The overall story for the entire series would have been that God was using Dante to dismantle his angel's system of judgment that he has now deemed as unfair, and also to defeat Lucifer for good. It seems like they were going to go even further into taking liberties with the source material as they went on, and really make it their own story, which I think I would have been okay with. The Divine Comedy gives a really cool depiction of biblical locations and characters, and I think they did a really good job with the first part, so I would have liked to see what they could have done with the rest. There was also going to be competitive multiplayer because it's 2012, that was pretty much mandatory for EA games, but it might have been cool like Mass Effect's was. It's been 15 years now though, and with this article giving all the details, it's pretty clear that there's no chance these sequels are ever going to see the light of day, so the most lasting legacy of this game is most likely going to be that viral marketing I keep alluding to. This shit is insane. Alright, let's get through the simple stuff first, like EA mailing $200 checks to games journalists with a message that cashing the check would mean that they've succumbed to greed, while not cashing it would be wasteful and thus its own sin, so they're damned either way. Journalists responded by burning it or donating the money to a charity, and clearly didn't like the stunt. I mean, well, they were probably already annoyed with EA for the other stuff involving journalists, like the cakes in the shape of limbs that they sent to them, or the fake protests outside of E3 I already talked about. But that wasn't all they did to them either, because apparently finding unique ways to be annoying as hell to journalists was a full-time job at EA back in the 2000s. A special box was sent to some, like Yahtzee of 0 punctuation and now fully Ramblomatic, which just said, "The 5th circle of hell is close." And then you opened it, and it starts playing Never Gonna Give You Up. Endlessly. Even after you close the box. Inside it was also a hammer, and you had to smash the box to bits to get down into the part that held the batteries to make it stop. I'm sure they didn't get permission to use that song, and it didn't stop there, because there was also a message in it that said you had succumbed to anger by smashing the box, and told you to go to hell. There was one more thing at Comic-Con too, where they encouraged people to submit pictures with the infamous booth babes while committing an act of lust, with no description of what that means. If that wasn't bad enough, basically encouraging sexual harassment, the promised reward for the winner was a night with the hottest girl at Comic-Con, dinner, booty, and more. I have no idea how anyone thought that would be okay, or if anyone actually won anything, so who knows what that meant. This all would have been extremely annoying to journalists who were just trying to do their jobs, I'm sure, and it's not like it would have improved their review scores anyway, but journalists weren't the only ones EA took aim on, and these next two are the craziest ones that I could find. First, there was a website created and advertised called Hawk Panther. Take a look.
You ever noticed how all the good women are taken? Does the life partner that you always deserved already have a life partner? That the alpha male takes what he wants, anything he wants. His best friend's girlfriend, his co-worker's fiance, his brother's wife. Listen, your family and friends are important, but not as important as you finding your soulmate. Go to my website right now, and I will teach you how to become the Hawk Panther.
This must have been Andrew Tate's awakening. This ad was run during a WWE broadcast, and if you actually visited the website, which unfortunately no longer exists and has no images on the Wayback Machine, it would just have a message condemning you to the ninth circle of hell and advertise the game. I have to admit this one is less annoying than the others, and the ad was actually pretty funny, so while I still think it was a waste of marketing budget, I'll let it slide. But for their final act of genius, they decided to create this.
A family shouldn't have to wait until Sunday to worship the Lord. Introducing Mass, We Pray. The wireless cross controller detects movement in 3 dimensions. Add the kneeler accessory and get off the couch and into the action. Featuring Ash Wednesday, Conduct the Choir, Transubstantiation, Taking Collection.
For this one, they also made a website where confused old people were probably the only visitors, and if you tried to order the game, it would warn you about your heresy and tell you to buy Dante's Inferno instead. Which the kind of people that would actually have clicked to buy something like that Wii knockoff abomination would think Dante's Inferno is way more heretical anyway, so that's just extra confusing. What was even the goal of something like this? Who are they trying to sell this to? I already said this, but I do think the game is pretty solid for a first game and a new IP, and nonsense like all this only would have served to piss people off and stop them from buying the game. I have no idea what they were thinking, and I'm pretty sure EA never tried anything like it again for good reason. Dante's Inferno never received a PC port, so the only easy way to play it today is with Xbox's great backwards compatibility. I doubt many people are going to want to fire it back up at this point, especially considering there are great games like the new God of War series and Devil May Cry 5 that don't feel so dated, but I do wonder what we could have gotten out of the franchise if EA was willing to stick with it. I don't know if it was the marketing budget or just not enough sales that made them cancel it, especially when so much work had apparently already been done on the sequel, but I don't attempt to understand what EA does. They're only motivated by one thing: greed. They did have a port of it made for PSP by Artificial Mind and Movement, aka Behavior, the Dead by Daylight devs, which is really interesting because it's somehow almost the entire game, just looking quite a bit worse. I'm thoroughly impressed that they were able to port such a complete version of the game to a handheld system like that though. There were also a couple DLC packs for the game that added a prequel level, and a level editor that allowed you to play in co-op on players' created levels, which is pretty cool, and for some reason they left the online servers up for that until 2023, so you would think there was at least some popularity to it. What's more, there were plans for a live-action film adaptation of the game, and that was only cancelled last year in 2024. It's like they were holding out hope for the franchise to be a moneymaker for them, even though they had already not only cancelled the game, but the studio that made it as well. If you're one of the people making or signing the petitions to get EA to remake the game, I'd spend your energy somewhere else. It's a bit of a cult hit and was certainly worthy of getting a sequel in my opinion, but we're never going to see this franchise again. The only hope would be for EA to sell it off to someone else and pray that they decide to actually do something with it, but that kind of thing is really uncommon. That being said, I hope you enjoyed the video anyway, and I'll be here hoping to God that EA never sends me an unmarked box. I'll see you next time.